Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I'm Rhea the Science Girl, here to talk to you about all things science. Now, before we get started, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below because it does help me out quite a lot. Without further ado, let's get right into today's topic. Welcome to the series,
Addiction, disease or a choice,
where we talk about whether addiction is a
disease or a choice.
Today's substance affects more than 17 million people worldwide. Back in 2016, the number of first-time users in just the United States was about 170,000. That's about double what it was 10 years ago. This statistic is important to note because the drug is actually so addictive that even after just one-time use, someone could develop a tolerance or dependence on the drug. The abuse of this drug can alter your brain, and unfortunately, these changes are not easily reversible. Ranked as the second most dangerous drug in the world, right after alcohol, today's spotlight is on heroin. We're going to be talking about where heroin originated, what users experience and the lethality of these effects, how it interacts with our brain, and of course, we have to talk about whether it is a
disease or a choice.
Heroin comes from the infamous opium poppy. Opium was first discovered when the opium-containing sap of these poppies was consumed. Now, of course, opium has its stimulating effects on the brain, but it seems as though we humans like to take things a step further. Like, come on, we all know that one kid who is ready with an aerosol can and a lighter at the drop of a hat.
Did someone say cockroach?
Timmy, put that away. Literally no one said cockroach. I kid, guys, but really, we always like to strive for more. And even though a lot of our advances today have come from this mindset, unfortunately, a lot of bad has come from it too. Like in my cocaine addiction video, I talk about how coca leaves, where cocaine comes from, were chewed for thousands and thousands of years with no issues whatsoever. But the problem only came when these plants were processed and concentrated cocaine was produced from it. Well, a similar thing happened with heroin as well. See, when opium was first discovered, it became a very popular drug for thousands of years. Now, I'm not saying opium didn't come with its issues because it came with its own issues, but we took it a step further and extracted morphine from that same poppy plant. Morphine was seen as sort of like a magic pill back in the day because it had these amazing short-term effects of numbing extreme pain and creating a sense of euphoria. However, its long-term addictive effects were not known at the time, so it was not regulated the way that it is today. It was used during the Civil War to aid soldiers and, as expected, left thousands of soldiers addicted and physically dependent on morphine. Now, to combat this, a German pharmaceutical company, Bayer, came up with heroin by further processing morphine. And when it first came out, heroin was marketed as a treatment for morphine addiction. And you won't believe it, they made the same exact mistake again. They focused on the short-term effects and not the long-term effects of the drug. Heroin was seen as sort of this wonder drug, which had all the pain-killing and euphoric properties of morphine, but none of the addictive effects. And I'm gonna let you in on a secret. They were wrong. It was used extremely liberally and distributed over the counter for decades, in lethal doses, might I add. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it gets worse. People were getting heroin samples mailed to their house. Free heroin samples mailed to people's houses. Free samples of heroin in the mail. In the mail. Yeah, in the mail. Free samples of... Hey, yo, you want to go to Costco? I love those free samples of heroin that they give out. Consequently, this led to hundreds and thousands of people being helplessly addicted to heroin at the beginning of the 20th century. Heroin is generally known to be injected, but it can also be smoked or snorted, and users may experience the following effects: a rush of euphoria, slowing down of the nervous system, which leads to a decrease in pain and anxiety, dry mouth, limbs feeling heavier, body temperature increasing, nausea and vomiting, slowing down of breathing, which leads to a decrease in oxygen levels in our body, which can induce a coma and cause brain damage, irregular or slow heart rate, and fading in and out of consciousness, kind of like in a dream state. In the case of an overdose, these effects are taken way too far, to a point where the slowed heart rate results in the brain not receiving enough blood to function, and the slowed breathing leads to respiratory system failure. So just like any other addictive substance or behavior, heroin use produces a surge of dopamine in your brain's reward system, which leads to your brain creating a strong memory loop of this activity or behavior, which leads to you yearning and craving for this activity and behavior, and then leads to you repeating said behavior. You guys know the drill by now. If you'd like to know more about how exactly this happens, do check out these two videos where I go more into detail about how dopamine affects the brain and how it works. But heroin use also messes with the pathway of another important neurotransmitter, endorphin. Endorphins are naturally occurring neurotransmitters in our body, which are released when our body is under stress or pain. It slows down the nervous system response in order to decrease pain. During exercise, for example, we often hear about the runner's high, which is a short-lasting and deeply euphoric state that generally comes right after an intense workout. It comes from the release of endorphins in the brain. So let's take a look at the general pathway of endorphins.
So as you can see, the opioid receptors are shown in dark blue, the natural endorphins are the light blue circles, and the opioid drug, which in this case is heroin, is shown as purple circles. When natural endorphins are released, they bind to the opioid receptors in our brain, and we experience that runner's high phenomenon that we spoke about earlier. In this animation, you can clearly see the difference between when natural endorphins are released in our brain versus when an opioid is used. Heroin use severely oversaturates the receptors, which is what contributes to its effects. Over repeated use, these receptors are worn down, and more heroin will be needed to achieve the same level of high, which could lead to an overdose.
Even if you are careful and don't overdose on heroin, there are a lot of other negative long-term side effects of heroin abuse, like an increased risk of hepatitis C from use of unsanitary needles. Actually, about 70 to 80% of hepatitis C cases in the US annually are a direct result of drug use. An infection of the heart lining, kidney disease, respiratory complications such as tuberculosis and pneumonia, permanent brain and liver damage, skin infections, damaged teeth, and gum swelling. The fact that the drug is so highly addictive means that anyone who has developed a physical dependence on the drug will have an extremely difficult time quitting even after the damaging health effects begin to impact their livelihood. This further leads to negative mental side effects, and as tolerance and dependence grows, the withdrawal symptoms that are already known to be extremely intense, by the way, become worse. These withdrawal symptoms may include insomnia or lack of sleep, extreme muscle and bone pain, nausea and vomiting, and cold flashes. If this growing trend of heroin abuse continues, it is estimated that over the span of the next 10 years, nearly 500,000 people could die as a direct result of heroin use. As I said in my cocaine video, guys, the only time you truly have a choice is the very first time that you use the drug. But now that you guys know all of the facts and figures, my job here is done. So I'm sure you'll make the right choice before it becomes a disease and you no longer have a choice. So stay safe, and until next time, Rhea the Science Girl out.